From the shadowy depths of the city, where justice and mystery intertwine, emerges a broadcast as daring and vigilant as the masked Avenger himself. You are tuned in to the Green Hornet Case Files, unveiling the legacy and cultural significance of one of the greatest crime fighters of all time. Now, let the adventure begin. Here are your hosts, Kory and Greg.
Hey, welcome back. It's episode 7 of the Green Hornet Case Files. I'm Greg.
I'm Kory.
And we have some fun for you this time because I don't know if you remember, Kory. I know how your memory is sometimes.
It's bad. It's terrible.
It is bad. A couple of episodes back, or 3 episodes back, I can't remember now.
You're not much better.
Yeah, and I'm a lot older than you, too. We started this thing about becoming the Green Hornet. How do you become the Green Hornet? And of course, we started by talking about, how do you fight bad guys?
Right.
And we had my buddy Jason Bond on talking about, Bruce Lee and Kung Fu and karate and Jeet Kune Do and all those kind of things. And the more I got thinking about this topic, I love this topic, absolutely love this topic. How would I become the Green Hornet if that were me? I am not practicing martial arts at this point in time. I did in the past, so I have the basic, of the whatever. You got to see the visual part of this.
I've got it.
Okay. And but then I went, okay, but really it's wrong. It's against the law to be a vigilante.
It was a topic that came up.
It did. We discussed that. And the more I thought about it, I thought, it'd be really great if we had our own district attorney, our Frank Scanlon, that came along and talked to us about what's right and what's wrong, and that they would give me the nod that it was okay for me to become the Green Hornet.
Is this all you've been waiting for is permission?
I've been waiting, just waiting for permission. So I asked a friend of mine who actually is, well, he actually isn't, but he actually is, retired Benton County Prosecutor Andy Miller. And we were just saying Benton County Prosecutor is same thing basically as district attorney.
Some states call it district attorney, some states call it prosecuting attorney.
So you're my Frank Scanlon.
I'll be your Frank Scanlon.
Ooh, I am so excited about this.
Remember how we were just talking about his wife opening a can of worms?
And by the way, just so that you know, Andy, we are recording this. Okay.
For legal reasons.
For legal reasons, we are recording this podcast. You and I have kind of known each other off and on for years,
Yes.
but not really personally. We've known of each other, so really glad to have you on the podcast. And
I'm having fun just watching you two go at it.
for coming out and playing. I think we need
you didn't turn it down.
It didn't work. I have to have
There it is.
a buzz for that. Thank you very much. So the whole idea here, and correct me if I'm wrong, being a vigilante is against the law, yes?
Well, it depends on the specifics.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting there, right?
Yeah.
We're getting there.
We're going to cross the I's and dot the T's.
So can you be more specific than that?
Well, I think it depends on what you define as a vigilante. I think a lot of times people are doing the research, trying to do investigation where they think law enforcement is stopped. And sometimes if somebody's going to do that, they can get in the way. But sometimes people find out they get breaks on a case.
Like the Golden State Killer case type of thing?
I had an example of one.
I'm sorry.
This guy, he went by the name of Tarzan. And I
knew that guy. No.
Did you? Well,
no, I didn't.
There was a guy in Kennewick, and he would go to different apartment places dressed in a loincloth like Tarzan. And he lived his own life. We had a very, very sad beating. and we thought it was a drug deal, and the police came into a dead end. And then I get a call at the office, and it's a guy who identifies himself as Tarzan. I later learned his real name. And he
Which will not be divulging here tonight.
You notice I'm a lawyer. I avoided that.
Thank you.
And anyway, he said he had information on this beating. And so, of course, I say, well, I'll bring one. I'll meet you at the police department so you give a statement to the detective. And he says, I don't trust the police.
No.
And he says, I want to meet with you, and I'm only going to meet with you. And if you show up with somebody, I'm gone. And I did give KPD a heads up, but I said, I don't know. You never know how these things go. So I agreed to meet this guy. It was at an office building for a local building contractor. The police knew where I was, but we agreed that they'd stay a quarter mile away. He was dressed in his loincloth, and he told me he had done a little investigating on his own, and he knew some of the people involved. And he told me who the suspect was and who he thought did it. And he gave some information. He eventually became to trust me, and so he followed up, and I was able to get him to sit down with the detective. Again, not at the police station, but just two and one. And the police started investigating, and guess what? Turns out he was right. And what he led into a series of things. During this time, the beating victim died, and the story that Tarzan gave us was that it was over somebody who had not paid his drug debt, and that there were two of them, our main assailant, and he had an accomplice. And then Tarzan told us that he had killed his accomplice, so the accomplice wouldn't talk. Wow. And he gave directions to Hover Park, and we went that night with the police, and they found the body of that accomplice. So everything that Tarzan told us turned out to be true, and as a result, in addition to good police work, we got this double murderer arrested and convicted.
Holy mackerel. I was not expecting that.
I have so many questions, Andy. So many questions.
I remember when that happened.
Do you?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Findlay.
Okay. Well, yeah, because the second body was found in Hover.
Hover, yeah. Yep. I remember that.
Oh, you have a good memory.
So
and by the way, that Tarzan did not break any laws. He didn't take any direct action against the perpetrators.
See, there's a key.
I guess that's what we're going to talk about a little bit later. But to the extent he was a vigilante, he actually ended up doing good, and he didn't break any laws.
That's such a good story.
It is.
And I like that he's cuckoo pants and wearing a loincloth. That's fantastic. And I mean, no offense if he happens to stumble across this. That's rad.
I will say this, and I know we aren't going to go any further with this. He had, you know how most men could not wear a loincloth? He could.
I was getting ready to ask that question. Did he look good in the loincloth?
He actually looked very good.
Some men just can't pull off a loincloth.
This one. Right here.
I did not say Fat Cato. Okay?
No, you didn't. No, you
okay.
didn't. You
all right. I did not.
Looked directly in my eyes.
I'm sorry. That, I believe, it's a great story, Andy. And I think that's key to, I mean, being a human being and being a citizen of a place and the community watch, the neighborhood watches and those kind of things. I think those are things that are all key. Obviously, when we are talking about any kind of a superhero, let me back up. I don't want to use the word superhero because that's a whole
ground
nother
level.
Yeah, a whole nother crime fighters that happen to maybe wear costumes of some sort. You know, the Batmans, the Green Arrows, who help me out here? Daredevil.
Well, I mean, still.
Sort of has a superpower, but
yeah.
the Green Hornets of the world and the Catos, who just happen to be Batmans, who are rich people. They have the means to an end, and yet they insert themselves. What was it? The Green Hornet always says, even the G-man, can't, and the government getting angry because he mentions the G-man. But I think is that the fine line? Is if I get involved, does that cross a boundary?
Well, there is a crime of obstructing a police investigation. That's actually a misdemeanor crime. And so I'm not saying that people should go out and do their own investigations because they can mess things up. And sometimes the police will deliberately hold back some information. So if we get to the real criminal, if there's information that haven't been released, we can check the validity of a confession based on that information.
Mm-hmm.
But it depends on what types of help that they do. And then, of course, I think the next step is somebody going to go ahead and do a citizen's arrest or something like that actually takes action. And then we're getting into probably stickier legal issues.
The one beauty for me with the Green Hornet is that both the criminals and law enforcement believe that the Green Hornet is a bad guy.
Right.
Law enforcement believes that the Green Hornet is the baddest of the baddies, and the criminals kind of believe that he's the baddest of the baddies, and yet at the same time he twists everything to the good.
What about Frank Scanlon, the DA? I've actually forgotten about his.
Well, that's the television version.
Okay.
In the radio version and the movie serials, I believe later on Martin was telling us, in the later on radio serials, there's a little bit of collusion, I think, kind of happening. But
before that, no one knew.
Yeah, it was a Green Hornet. It was Britt Reed and Cato that were the only two that knew. In the television program, then it became Britt Reed and Cato, his secretary, Miss Case. The case files, and Frank Scanlon, the DA, who would sneak down the alleyway and go in through the back door and meet up with Cato, and Britt Reed. And there was that transfer of information, which is that an official on the take? Would you perceive that as...
Okay, remember, I'm a lawyer, and once lawyers start talking, I can get too deep into the weeds. So if I go too far, just tell me to shut up.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
But here's a problem with what you just described, especially in Washington State. Ordinarily, a private citizen, for an example, can go into somebody's backyard without a search warrant, and that is going to be okay. That is not going to be suppressed. Or somebody can get a confession from a defendant, and they could even tape it possibly, and that would be okay. However, if that Green Hornet type person contacts the police or the prosecutor and says, this is what I'm going to do, and the police or prosecutor have any involvement and say, okay, that sounds good, let me know what happens when you find out. Under Washington state law, which is a very liberal state, as far as criminal justice is, just that contact right there has turned that person in from a private citizen into a state actor. And so then if the person, after talking to the DA or the police officer, hops a fence in the backyard and finds some drugs in there, now that would be suppressed under the Fourth Amendment.
Oh.
Does that make sense?
So I want to make sure that I got this right. Mm-hmm. So if I go in and I trick Greg into saying something while I'm recording it, it could be admissible. But if I say, hey, I'm going to go talk to Greg and trick him into saying this, then that makes me implicit under the law the other way.
That's right.
Okay.
For an example, we get a lot of jailhouse confessions where criminals in jail and it's bragging about a case. We want to corroborate it, and sometimes they may want a deal for their testimony, so we have to be very careful. But we've called witnesses like that before. However, there were cases where the sheriff's office or prosecutors would send somebody into jail and say, we want you to talk to Joe Blow about this case, then he is a state actor. And I made a mistake in my example, which is in Washington State, it's illegal to tape record somebody. So you could go to Greg and you could get him to confess to a crime, and you could actually testify to that, and you didn't have to give Miranda. But if you taped him confessing to the crime, that there's a good chance that's going to be illegal,
Okay.
and you would end up being prosecuted.
All right. Hence why your little disclaimer at the beginning of this.
Hence why I said we were recording this. You have to remember that I worked in radio my entire career. I was in broadcasting, and anytime anybody called up at the radio station, we had to implicitly say, this is being recorded and may be used on the air. You can hang up now.
Well, and that is why now the jail phone calls, they are tape recorded. And that you start off that jail phone call with a warning. This is recorded, and so a lot of times we will use statements or tape those phone conversations and put them into court, because it strains my credibility. How many people are told this is being recorded by law enforcement, and they go on to call from the jail and tell their girlfriend, if you don't take back your statement, I'm going to bash your head in.
Oh, jeez.
There you go. There you go. All right. Andy Miller, retired Benton County Prosecutor, our District Attorney Frank Scanlon, our version of, is our guest here, and we're talking about becoming the Green Hornet and the legalities, I guess, around it. So let me bring another one at you here, Andy.
Okay.
And I don't know that Kory does this, but he might. He might get his hockey gear on. He might get his shin pads. He might get his elbow pads. He might carry around his hockey stick. Kory happens to be a big fan of hockey, so I chose that in particular. And he likes to go out late at night, and he's the hockey stick. That's his crime fighting name, the hockey stick.
Okay.
And he goes out late at night and patrols around on his tricycle.
On his tricycle.
On his tricycle.
You're painting a wonderful picture here.
Thank you. It's not one of the little, kind of tricycles. It's the big full sized, like my grandmother used to ride. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm sorry, Granny.
She's just mad now.
So he goes out and he finds the worst places in town and waits for things to happen, and then utilizes his extensive mixed martial arts skills with his hockey stick to bust up maybe a drug deal, maybe somebody is being attacked, and he inserts himself into that situation. And I say this because I do know there are things called the RLSH, Real Live Superheroes, in Seattle, in Portland, in Los Angeles, San Francisco. Every major city has, they're also known as extreme altruists, costume vigilantes, costume activists, citizen heroes. Andy, you're on. Go.
In a small world tangent, Matt Hartman, who was a deputy prosecutor in Benton County, went to Seattle, became a criminal defense attorney, and he actually represented the one you talked about that was arrested in Seattle. And so he had a very interesting perspective about that.
Was it that Phoenix Jones? Yeah, okay,
yes.
all right.
In fact, his picture, Matt's picture, was in the paper, Seattle Times, with Phoenix Jones, I think, after one of their court appearances.
Okay, all right. So there you go. There's the case. Where's Kory sit legal-wise in this whole thing?
Well, you gave two different scenarios, and I think there's different answers. If you see somebody being attacked, there's a law that says that it's not just self-defense, but the self-defense law also says and defense of others. So if you think that somebody is getting attacked or getting hurt, you are going to be able to use force to stop that assault. And now, disclaimers again.
Well, we have a lot of disclaimers on this show.
That's right.
Yeah, it's great.
The force has to be reasonable, though interestingly enough, it has to be reasonable from the perspective of the person who's doing the actions, like saving the person. But yeah, if you see somebody like slap somebody in the face and you come in and you take your hockey stick and you crack open his skull, you've probably exceeded that statutory defense.
Okay.
Yes, but if you are witnessing a robbery or an assault, and again, the police may tell you what is the right common sense thing to do or not, but you don't ask lawyers to come on your show to talk about common sense. You're asking about law. In that situation, you aren't going to be facing any criminal charges. And the drug deal, you could call and report the drug deal. You could do some surveillance. But if you use force to break up a drug deal and wrestle somebody until the police came here, you might be crossing the line and you might be exposing yourself to a criminal arrest.
Okay.
Does that make sense, the differences between the two?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
So if force is basically to break, I want to boil it down to the simple.
You want to know what you can do tonight, right?
Well, that's
all right. All right.
No, but if force is being used, force in retaliation is acceptable. It
has to be reasonable under the circumstances.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But force initiated by said vigilante, not saying me. but saying that would be that's where the line would be.
Well, that would be a line. And it's up there. And of course, we're talking nice, fun things about how could you be a Green Hornet kind of philosophical thing. Everyone listening to the show knows I'm not giving exact legal advice. You can do this and you can't do this, because lawyers love to look at things and parse things over and second guess you.
Right.
But that's a general rule of thumb. If you see somebody being attacked, you're going to be able to go in and prevent that attack, stop that attack. Witnessing a non-violent crime, the odds are if you start using force, you're likely to get into trouble.
So, just that this is an aside, is that why most retail outlets don't actively try to stop shoplifting? Is that a similar thought process?
A similar thing. I think that their attitude, though, is probably more insurance and liability, because there have been some cases where the officer may make a mistake and the person is actually not guilty, or sometimes they may use excessive force for shoplifting, and the corporation that employs it, because they have deep pockets that will attract smart lawyers, they can get sued. And so I think from their perspective, it's more of an issue of civil liability.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes sense.
This is a very litigious society these days. So, yes.
Indubitably.
There are those things. One of the interesting things, as I was doing some research for this, and I'd absolutely forgotten all about the Guardian Angels. Curtis Sliwa, that started the Guardian Angels in New York City.
The Red Berets?
Yeah, the Red Berets, all those years ago. And, I mean, that's exactly what it was. I mean, they inserted themselves, and they became kind of heroes in a way. You're shaking your head, yes?
Well, I think they were heroes for a while, and I think what happened is I think they went too far on a number of crimes, and they seemed to be targeting certain groups. And I think, and then there was a lot of internal dissension, I think, too. My memory is they lost some of their glow at the end.
I think you're right. Yeah, but the initial,
they were heroes at the beginning. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and everybody thought that they were great, and it was an awesome thing.
The Hells Angels, they acted as bodyguards for the Rolling Stones.
Yes, they did.
And things
Altamont.
like that. Mm-hmm.
And then there was Altamont.
Yes.
Yeah, and look how we've fallen.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So now I want to throw another wrinkle into this.
Okay.
Kory's tricycle.
Yeah.
It's
not a real tricycle. It's one of these things adults do that actually they can be powered, right?
They can be.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it makes a little strange little noise when it when it drives down. It kind of sounds like. Yeah. So he also has, though, a couple of heat-seeking missiles.
Heat-seeking missiles
that
are attached to the tricycle?
That are attached to the tricycle, and if he is in a really bad situation, Maybe he needs to open up a way to get out of the warehouse, and he utilizes those heat-seeking. I'd like to see that, though.
I would too. I'm stoked on this.
Podcast at greenhornet66.com. So any of you artists out there, we should call a couple of our artist friends
and do a commission of Fat
do
Kato
a
on
commission of the hockey stick. The hockey stick with his tricycle with heat-seeking missiles. Take that. All of a sudden I have, and his tricycle is really fast, by the way, and he has eluded every chase that has ever happened in the Tri-Cities. We know, Kennewick, Pasco, Richland police are not the fastest, and his tricycle is really fast. So you're on, District Attorney Frank Scanlon.
First issue is possessing a heat-seeking missile is undoubtedly a crime.
Okay.
And
You didn't get that from Amazon?
you are in trouble possessing that heat-seeking missile, and there are certain weapons that are not protected by this Second Amendment, and the feds have a lot of very stringent and specific laws, and so does the state, but you're likely to get in trouble with the federal ATF.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, if you wanted to modify that and say you had, I don't know, we don't want to get any controversy, but let's say you got a firearm that was, not a machine gun, but a machine gun is illegal to possess. But if you got a semi-automatic, and I know some people don't like that term, but we're going to, hopefully our audience gives us the benefit of the doubt, but we're talking about something like that. And then they have a weapon that is actually legal to possess and legal to use, then our whole scenario may be different.
Okay.
Because the law also says not only you're committing a crime by possessing the heat-seeking missiles, but the fact that you entered into an action by committing the crime is going to color everything you do after that.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Okay. All right.
So it has to be a trebuchet.
There you go. Rubber bullets. I don't know. One of the beauties about, and I just happened to watch a YouTube video this afternoon, and I can't tell you the name of it. I wished I could, because I would give a shout out to the guy who posted it. And he made a very specific thing about when George Trendle and Fran Stryker created the Green Hornet. They originally created the Lone Ranger. And one of the caveats as they went into this was that the Lone Ranger was kind of against violence. And there was he didn't use his guns really. He didn't kill.
Right.
He didn't kill. And then when the popularity of that show was so big and they created the Green Hornet, that was also a caveat that was passed on to Fran Stryker, who ultimately wrote the show. Consequently, they created the gas gun idea, so that if the Green Hornet was in a bad situation, he didn't whip out a .45 like the Shadow or somebody like that and blast it his way. He would do, with the gas and all of it. Did you like the sound effects?
You're just killing it with the Foley today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Kind of like Star Trek when your phaser was set to stun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, is it wrong to carry a gas gun? Can I?
Yeah, that would be. I thought I was going to get through the whole show without either one of you stumping me.
Good work.
I made it 30 minutes and 2 seconds.
Well, counselor, would you like to take a recess here so that we can? I don't know about that
again.
one, huh?
Well, again, I think some of the things like a gas gun might be legal, and some of them might not be legal. I think it depends on what the gas would be. We can get real complicated. I think.
Oh, sure.
We're looking for that. But yeah, so I think you're going to have the same issue. But certainly, if you have something that is just going to, well, how about using an example of bear spray?
Oh, okay.
You know?
Has the hockey stick used bear spray yet?
Well, they do call me Bear.
They do. That's why I'm looking at you, okay?
So let's say bear spray, and bear spray is not going to kill anybody,
Right.
but it's certainly going to disable somebody. And so let's say you were there and you saw something, and you again, if crime's being committed, you use bear spray instead of fracturing your skull with a hockey stick, you're probably better off. Can I guarantee that if you use bear spray to stop a crime in progress that you aren't going to get in trouble? No, I can't guarantee it, because it's going to depend on the circumstances.
Right.
But you're probably better off in that, because if you just walked up, like if I just saw Greg waiting to let me into the studio today and just gave him a whole can of bear spray, that would actually be an assault. That would be a criminal assault. Probably third-degree assault, not even misdemeanor assault. So again,
What did I do to you?
well, you know, you stumped me at the 30-minute mark.
Oh, God. You know, there are so many. There are so many. And you've called me out on a couple of them. You know, when you get into this, I mean, this is deep weeds.
Yeah.
This can be really deep weeds. And we didn't even touch about the fact that, you know, if Kory's going really fast on his tricycle, that he's evading capture, you know,
By the police?
by the police.
Well, that would be a felony crime.
Yeah, there you go. So
I can. By the way, if any of your listeners ever wanted a cure for insomnia, you can invite me for a different show, because I can go on and on and on about the law. I was just about to give the 5 elements of felony eluding, but I realized that's probably not what you guys are looking for tonight.
no, probably not. Probably not.
I need to take notes, though.
The hockey stick needs to take notes, because next week's show will. I tell you what, this whole topic just absolutely fascinates me, and you have to, as we've said many, many times so far on the show, you have to remember that this was created back in the 1930s, and things were a lot different back in the 1930s. Mm-hmm. Law was not quite so, what's a good word? Complex, maybe? Mm-hmm. There was also a lot more, I believe there was a lot more consideration for right and wrong back then, as opposed to maybe the gray areas of the law. Am I getting myself in the weeds here with you, Counselor?
No, but you know, on the other hand, didn't Bonnie and Clyde and was it Pretty Boy Floyd? Some of those criminals actually had a little bit of a Robin Hood appeal, especially during the 1930s.
There was, yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm not
Dillinger,
sure that would
that's
happen
who.
now. John Dillinger.
John Dillinger, yeah. Interesting. I didn't equate that.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
and
yeah.
it's also, I mean, you got to boil it down societally as well. At the end of the day, our country has always lauded rebels. We've always celebrated the outlaw, you know, from Billy the Kid and Jesse James all the way up, and so the
Butch
Hornet,
Cassidy, Sundance Kid.
it
this
just
whole
falls
thing.
into, and then through Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde and these. It's a very romanticized thing in this society.
Well, ask yourself this question. You've seen lots and lots of movies and TV shows about courtroom cases. And how many of those are the prosecutor the hero? Versus Perry Mason, Matlock. Now we have the Lincoln lawyer.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it kind of fits into what you're saying. People kind of want to root for the person, kind of hoping the person turns out to be innocent, but no one gets a lot of pleasure, or you don't root for the weight of the state crushing down on an individual to a certain extent.
Right.
Not usually. Not usually. All right. Retired Benton County Prosecutor Andy Miller, thank you for coming in and spending some time with us and talking about this. We got into the weeds a little bit. We stumped you once.
You did?
And I think there's maybe more conversations to be had here on this.
Thank you very much. I had a blast tonight.
Great. Glad to hear that.
Oh man, it's been awesome. Thank you.
Green Hornet Case Files. Before we get out of here, a couple of housekeeping notes here. We talked about some pop culture references last time.
I knew you were going to bring this up.
And you came up with one.
Yep.
That I hadn't thought about.
And we both knew it.
Well, that's true.
That's what bummed me out is like we were trying to connect all the references that the Hornet has popped up in, and they use the Hornet theme in Kill Bill.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
In Tarantino's Kill Bill. Now,
film.
the interesting side note there is the soundtrack and the orchestration of Kill Bill was done by RZA of the Wu-Tang Clan.
Oh, see, I knew you were going to bring that. You had to get Wu-Tang in here somehow.
Every time, baby, every time.
Every time. I also had an email from Todd Stutz who said, I have a pop culture reference to the Hornet that will take you down memory lane. Well, he piqued my interest really quick on that. On Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. Can we talk about Bill Cosby on the show?
1970s Cosby? Sure.
Okay, all right. They would sometimes play their version of the Green Hornet. I don't know if you watched the show or not.
I did watch it avidly as a kid, yeah.
Okay. He used to be the Brown Hornet.
Which I don't think we can say now.
Sorry, I just said it. It's out there.
No,
so that was the Cosby thing. And he gave us some kudos for the episode that we were on.
So thank you.
That was really nice, and I appreciate the pop culture references. If you think of one, be sure and email us, podcast@greenhornet66.com.
I'm going to go see if I can find that clip, though, the Brown Hornet.
The Brown Hornet?
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
That would be a good clip to find.
It would be.
We may have to see if we can play that. We have also been, boy, I tell you what, I've had so many emails and so forth in the last week or so in regards to the show. We hinted at somebody coming up. You want to make the announcement?
So, the daughter of William Dozier, Deborah Potter, that's coming up. That's the next one.
She's going to be on the show.
It's going to be awesome.
Bill Dozier's daughter is going to be on the show.
And she shared so much stuff that I had no idea about. And I mean, some of the stuff you knew, but I didn't know, and I was just super happy.
And she's got a couple of great stories to tell us.
Oh yeah.
So that's coming up here in the next episode, episode 8. So if you're kind of sitting on the sidelines, jump in.
That's going to be a good one, yeah.
That'll be a great one. All right. This has been fun. This has been fun. I've learned so much of what I can and can't do. And I am excited to see if somebody comes up with a drawing of the hockey stick. So
it's going to be, oh no.
Oh, no. All right. It's the Green Hornet Case Files, and we appreciate you again. If you have a comment, questions about anything, if we get something wrong, by all means, except for Andy's part, because he's the lawyer and he'll sue you anyway. Yeah.
Hockey stick at Green Hornet 66.
Podcast at greenhornet66.com.
All right, man.
Is that a wrap for us?
I think this has been a fantastic one. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
It's been a great episode. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks.
All right. It's Green Hornet Case Files. We'll talk to you next time.
As the night envelops the city once more, our journey through the hidden alleys of history and valor comes to a close. You've been riding shotgun with the Green Hornet Case Files, where the echoes of the past meet the voices of the present. Tune in again for the next thrilling adventure where shadows speak, secrets unfold, and the legacy of the Green Hornet continues to inspire. The Green Hornet Case Files is a Grail Productions podcast. The Green Hornet is owned exclusively by Green Hornet, Inc. Until next time, vigilant listeners, keep your wits sharp and your spirit unbreakable.